You know what sticks with me about that afternoon? Picture this. In the middle of a busy street, an elderly black woman, Clara Jennings, gets screamed at by a cop who doesn't even hesitate to kick the white cane from her hand. The cane drops, and right there, Officer Scott Dalton snaps it in half like it's nothing. A piece flies up, catches Clara right in the face. She bleeds, but the cop just looks at her like he's taking out the trash and turns away. Only thing he doesn't know, seconds later, her son Marcus Jennings, a former FBI tactical commander, arrives. Now, let me ask you, what would you do if that was your mother? The whole thing began with that summer heat, shimmering above the asphalt, everyone cranky and cars idling like caged animals. Clara steps off the curb. No sunglasses, no guide, just her thick coat and a cane that seemed to cut the air itself with each step. Every tap of that cane was a message. I'm here, you move. She owned that crosswalk, even if she couldn't see the lines. Midway through, all hell broke loose. Car horn blared. Someone shouted. Then Officer Dalton exploded out of his cruiser, all stiff uniform and sharper attitude. Back it up. You blind or just stupid? He barked, boots coming down like he was nailing the world in place. Clara didn't budge. She paused, cocked her head like she was listening to the world breathing, then tapped her cane so close to his boot you could feel the tension. She stepped past him, not around, not scared, just claiming her space while phones across the street started recording. Nobody spoke, but you could taste the charge in the air. Clara reached the curb, took a breath. The city tried to move on, but you could sense everyone's eyes on the scene, waiting for a crack, a gasp, anything. Officer Dalton stayed put, trying to gather up what was left of his dignity, fiddling with his belt, glancing at the phones, but he wasn't fooling anyone. And as Clara moved down the sidewalk, the city's rhythm only slowly returned, like it was waking from a bad dream. But Dalton wasn't done. As Clara paused to adjust her grip, he followed, closed the gap, and cold as ice stomped down on her cane. The snap was quiet but ugly, obscene because it was so personal. The wood split. A jagged piece hit Clara's forehead. Blood ran down her face, but she didn't make a sound, just stood a little straighter. Dalton, stone-faced, picked up what was left, snapped the cane in two again, then tossed the pieces aside. You done walking yet? He sneered. Or you want me to break something else? Nobody said a word. The crowd was frozen in silence, so thick it might as well have been concrete. But sometimes it only takes one person. An older man in the crowd, Isaac Brooks, stooped but steady, spoke up. That's assault. Dalton's smile vanished. Step back, old man. You don't want to be next. Isaac didn't budge. Then a kid, maybe 12, raised his phone and shouted, Hey, you broke her cane? That's a hate crime, right? Dalton tried to stare him down, but the kid held his ground. Clara just stood there bleeding, silent, unbroken. That moment changed everything. Silence, but not surrender. And then, out of nowhere, a figure emerged from across the street. Marcus Jennings. He walked with the weight of someone who's seen too much, moved like he'd been trained not to waste motion or words. Marcus never even looked at Dalton. His focus was on the shattered cane, lying on the street like the aftermath of a broken promise. He had a tattoo on his forearm, sharp and unmistakable, a silent warning that he was more than he seemed. He didn't pick up the cane, didn't say a thing, just stood so still the block itself seemed to hold its breath. Down the block, a black SUV hummed quietly, windows blacked out, no markings. Even the air shifted as Marcus stepped closer, crossing that invisible line until Dalton realized he wasn't the center of gravity anymore. Dalton, rattled, tried to bark out another order, hand drifting toward his holster, but Marcus was calm. When Dalton pressed his radio and called for backup, trying to sound in control, Marcus took one step forward. That one step was like dropping a boulder in a pond. The crowd's fear cracked. A whisper cut through the heat. You picked the wrong guy. Dalton's face twitched, hand hovering, but he didn't draw. Marcus spoke, voice low, words surgical. If you touch her again, you better make sure it's the last thing you do standing. It didn't need to be louder. Dalton felt it. His hand fell, his confidence shrank, and suddenly everyone saw who really held the power. Clara's knees buckled just then, not from fear but the weight of everything. Marcus caught her with a hand steady, gentle, certain. He helped her straighten, standing beside her, no need to block or shield, just there, silent but unbreakable. When Marcus adjusted her balance, his shirt lifted, and for a split second, his FBI badge glinted beneath his collar. Dalton saw it, jaws set tight. The crowd, phones raised, realized this wasn't just any son, this was someone who could make the system blink. In that charged silence, Marcus quietly pulled out his phone, tapped a code. Minutes later, the black SUV down the block shifted, lights flashing once, and officers in plain clothes fanned out, quiet, professional, all business. Dalton's face drained of color. But the real story was just beginning. Marcus, with contacts deep in the system, dug into Dalton's history. Buried complaints, erased footage, closed-door discipline swept under the rug. Files marked internal only told of brutality, intimidation, and a whole city's worth of silent suffering. This time, Marcus sent every file, every receipt, straight to the legal watchdogs and advocacy groups. Overnight, the video exploded online, not just the cane snapping, but the cover-ups, the patterns, the shame that couldn't be denied. Hashtags trended. The city council tried to get ahead of the storm, but folks showed up angry, asking real questions. How many complaints before you lose your badge? Who's been protecting Dalton all these years? When a little girl, maybe 9, asked, "Why did the police hurt the blind lady?" the room froze. Not one council member had an answer that meant a thing. Dalton resigned in the night, shuttled away by men with no name tags, no cameras. Marcus tracked every handoff, every cover. He made sure nothing stayed hidden. 10 years back, Isaac Brooks had tried to report Dalton for breaking his nose at a protest. Back then, they told him, no footage, no case. Now, Isaac testified, not for vengeance, but for record. He didn't ask for apology, just that the truth be remembered. Meanwhile, Clara refused every interview, every press crew. When a reporter asked why she wouldn't speak, she answered, "My eyes don't work, but I see people are finally looking." That line spread across the city in walls, in classrooms, in whispers. Soon after, the broken cane was enshrined in a glass pillar downtown. No plaque, but 3 words etched in the base. Still standing. Still hers. People visited in silence, not to protest or mourn, but to witness, to honor something that had survived every effort to break it. One day, a young girl walked into the courthouse, dropped a note for the officials. "I used to think uniforms meant good guys, but that day the bad guy wore the badge." That sentence hit harder than any speech or protest. Later, Marcus was called to testify before Congress. He said only, "The cane broke. My mother fell. I stood up. They got scared." When asked if he hated the badge, Marcus replied, "I don't hate the badge. I hate the men who make it mean nothing." The story didn't end in a courtroom or a press conference. It ended with Clara walking her same route, head high, the city finally seeing her for who she'd always been. Marcus delivered her a new cane, carved with the words, "Still standing." Still her son. And in that silent space, the city learned something about respect. You can't legislate, you have to live it. So what do you say? Who decides when justice is done? How much silence is too much? Drop your thoughts below, because stories like this aren't over, they're just waiting for someone else to finish the line.